Imagine going from saying, "I'll never date a 9 to 5 man" to ending up on a dating app, searching for the very thing you once looked down on. This is the rise, the fall, and the messy reality of B. Simone, and trust me, you're gonna want to see how it all played out. Back in June 2020, B. Simone sat down for a podcast conversation with Nick Cannon. At that moment in her career, she was experiencing what many would call her prime years. She was single, unapologetically ambitious, and enjoying the kind of success that only a handful of entertainers ever get to taste. She wasn't just making money, she was building momentum, securing her place in pop culture as both a comedian and an for someone who had hustled her way up through social media skits, live shows, and entrepreneurial ventures. It was a season where her brand seemed unstoppable. The conversation with Cannon started off lighthearted, as most celebrity interviews do. They touched on her career, her projects, and the whirlwind of fame she had been navigating. But as often happens when two personalities sit down for a candid discussion, the dialogue veered toward something more personal: relationships. More specifically, the question of what kind of man B. Simone was looking for. It was here that things took a turn that would spark widespread debate. Rather than giving a safe, generic answer, B. Simone leaned into her truth. She explained that dating a man with a traditional 9 to 5 job wasn't appealing to her, not because she looked down on such men, she clarified, but because she felt their lifestyles simply didn't align with hers. As an entrepreneur, her schedule was unpredictable: 8 nights, sudden travel, constant networking. She wanted a partner who understood that grind, someone who could match her energy and wouldn't be frustrated by the demands of her career. To her, that meant she needed a man who was also an entrepreneur, or at least someone who operated outside of the conventional 9 to 5 structure. Now, in another context, this might have been brushed off as a preference no different from saying you prefer someone tall, athletic, or family-oriented. But because Simone was speaking at the height of her visibility, and because her comments struck a nerve with the working-class audience that made up a large portion of her fan base, the backlash was immediate. Clips of her remarks spread quickly across social media. Memes were made, think pieces were written, and almost overnight, what could have been a passing comment turned into a cultural talking point. The irony wasn't lost on people. Here was a woman who had once been relatively unknown, propelled into stardom largely because of the same working-class folks she seemed to be excluding. Fans began questioning, was she out of touch? Was she forgetting where she came from? Or was she simply being honest about a standard that many people secretly hold but are too afraid to admit? What made the moment so sticky was the broader conversation it represented. Simone wasn't just talking about her own preferences, she was poking at a nerve in modern dating culture. Her comments opened up debates about compatibility, ambition, and the gap between what men and women expect from one another. Can someone with an entrepreneurial spirit truly connect with someone whose life runs on a strict routine? Do relationships falter when partners live in fundamentally different worlds? Or is love supposed to bridge those divides no matter how wide they are? Simone's remarks also highlighted another truth. Women in the public eye are rarely allowed to voice their desires without scrutiny, while men are often praised for having standards or knowing what they want. Women who do the same are frequently labeled as picky, entitled, or ungrateful. To her supporters, Simone was simply articulating what many successful women feel but hesitate to say out loud: that they want a partner who not only understands their hustle but mirrors it. To her critics, however, she sounded dismissive, even arrogant, reducing men with regular jobs to unworthy suitors. The fallout from that podcast marked a turning point in B. Simone's public image. Before then, she had largely been seen as a rising star with a bubbly personality and a knack for making people laugh. But afterward, she became a polarizing figure. Some admired her honesty and agreed with her perspective. Others saw her as hypocritical, someone whose success was too fresh to justify looking down on others. What was undeniable, though, was that her comments got people talking not just about her, but about deeper issues of class, compatibility, and the shifting expectations in modern relationships. On hindsight, that podcast appearance was more than just another celebrity interview. It was the spark that set off a much larger conversation, one that would follow B. Simone for years to come and reshape the way many people viewed her, not just as a comedian or influencer, but as a woman navigating the complexities of success, love, and public scrutiny.
The example B. Simone gave specifically was, he wouldn't understand why I'm up at 3 in the morning. And if you work a 9 to 5, why would you want to be with somebody who will be up click-clacking, doing whatever for their business at 3?
B. Simone's remarks stirred quite a backlash, and almost immediately, The internet lit up with reactions. Her reasoning seemed simple enough. A traditional 9-to-5 lifestyle didn't align with the fast-paced, unpredictable rhythm of an entrepreneur's world. She explained that she needed someone who could understand her late nights, her spontaneous travel, and her constant hustle, things she felt a man with a more conventional job might struggle to accept. She openly admitted that dating a man who worked a regular shift just wasn't the right fit for her life, but what sounded like a straightforward personal preference quickly morphed into a lightning rod for criticism. Some accused her of arrogance, saying she was looking down on hardworking men who lived within the structure of corporate jobs. Others felt her comments revealed a sense of entitlement, as though she was setting herself above the very people who had once supported her rise to fame. Social media thrives on moments like these, and within hours, clips of the podcast went viral. Memes circulated, debates raged, and suddenly, B. Simone's dating standards became everyone's business. Interestingly, however, the backlash wasn't one. Many women voiced agreement with her perspective. They argued that being equally yoked in a relationship often goes beyond shared values. It requires a lifestyle alignment. An entrepreneur's grind can be lonely, exhausting, and misunderstood. And a partner who doesn't live in that world might unintentionally become resentful or feel neglected. For these women, B. Simone was simply putting into words a reality they had experienced. That love is difficult to sustain when two people's lives operate at vastly different speeds. This sparked a broader cultural conversation about compatibility in modern relationships. On one side were those who saw her comments as classist, dismissing the dignity of stable, hardworking men with 9-to-5 jobs. After all, not every man can or even wants to be an entrepreneur. On the other side were those who believed she was simply setting healthy boundaries for herself, recognizing that mismatched lifestyles can strain even the most promising partnerships. After all, is it wrong to admit that you want a partner who gets the way you live? The debate also revealed how differently men and women are judged for their standards. When men publicly state that they only want a certain type of woman, whether that means fit, attractive, or financially independent, they are often celebrated for being decisive. When women like B. Simone do the same, however, they are frequently criticized as shallow, delusional, or entitled. Her comments, in many ways, became a case study of this double standard. Beyond gender dynamics, there was also an underlying class discussion at play. The majority of people in America, and indeed, globally, work some version of a 9-to-5 job. By excluding them, Simone inadvertently highlighted a divide between those who live within traditional work structures and those who operate outside them. For entrepreneurs, freelancers, and creatives, her words rang true. For everyone else, they sounded like an unnecessary dismissal of a perfectly respectable way of life. Another layer of the controversy was timing. In 2020, the world was in the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic, and many people were rethinking their careers, struggling to make ends meet, or losing jobs altogether. Against that backdrop, Simone's words hit harder. To a man who was simply grateful to still have a paycheck, hearing a rising star say that a steady 9-to-5 wasn't good enough felt like a slap in the face. The optics were bad, even if her intention wasn't to insult. Still, the women who supported her weren't silent. They emphasized that personal preference doesn't necessarily equal disrespect. Wanting a partner whose life rhythm mirrors your own doesn't mean you think other people are beneath you. It just means you're being realistic about compatibility. And in fairness, Simone never said that 9-to-5 men lacked value. She only said that, for her, it wasn't the right fit. Ultimately, the moment exposed how complicated discussions about dating standards can be. Simone's comments didn't just touch a nerve, they peeled back layers of insecurity, pride, and cultural expectation. For some men, it felt like a personal rejection. For some women, it felt like permission to admit out loud what they'd been thinking privately. And for the broader audience, it was entertainment wrapped in controversy. What can't be denied is that Simone's remarks ignited a dialogue far bigger than herself. In voicing her truth, she unintentionally positioned herself at the center of an ongoing debate about ambition, class, gender, and love in the modern age. Whether people agreed or disagreed with her, they were talking, and that, in many ways, is what cemented the moment as one of the most memorable in her career.
We're manifesting love. But here's a little challenge. We got all these things we want in a man. A list of things. He gotta be tall, he gotta be dark, he gotta be handsome, he gotta have pretty teeth, he gotta be a family man, he gotta be financially stable, he gotta be rich, he gotta be successful, he gotta be all these things. And we ain't even half the things on that list. He gotta be a family man. You talk to your mama in 6 months, but you want him to be a family man. He gotta be financially stable. Your account is in the negative, ma'am. Overdraft fees. He got to have a job. You need to go fill out some applications because you're still unemployed. He got to have pretty teeth. You ain't seen the dentist.
The idea of being equally yoked in a relationship makes sense. You want a partner who matches your drive, values, and lifestyle. But here's the catch. Wanting something doesn't guarantee you can have it. Think about it. I've dreamed of being the point guard for the Sacramento Kings since the mid-90s. Did it happen? No. Could it ever happen? Not a chance. And that's fine. Desire alone isn't enough. If you're not what the opportunity requires, it simply won't align. That's the hard truth most people avoid. We chase what we can't attain, refuse to level up ourselves, and then blame fate or divine timing when things don't pan out. At the end of the day, sometimes it isn't the world overlooking you, it's that you're not offering the value you expect in return. B. Simone began to realize this after her infamous comments about not dating 9-to-5 men. In the aftermath, she pivoted. Instead of dismissing certain men, she flipped the conversation back onto women. She challenged them with a tough but necessary question. Are you living up to the standards you demand? She broke it down like this: many women keep a long list of requirements. He has to be tall, attractive, successful, financially stable, family-oriented, and the list goes on. Yet, when you hold up the mirror, the same women often aren't checking those boxes themselves. You want a family man, but you haven't spoken to your mother in months. You expect financial stability, but your account is drowning in overdraft fees. You demand employment, yet you're still not working. You want perfect teeth, but you haven't visited a dentist in years. Simone's point was blunt. You can't ask for what you're unwilling to embody. But here's where the controversy deepened. Simone's sudden shift, going from critiquing 9-to-5 men to scolding women for their unrealistic standards, struck many as opportunistic. Longtime followers began to see a pattern. One moment, she's a comedian. The next, she's presenting herself as a faith-driven then she's pivoting into lifestyle coaching, or switching up her message to chase relevance. To critics, it felt less like growth and more like a performance, a new grift every few months, each tailored to whatever would draw attention, money, or maybe even a man. So, when she turned her criticism toward women, the backlash was fierce.
Thing she does just screams, I'm trying to appeal to men and say and be whoever I can to get a man. And I would have loved to see her career if she were operating from a place of self-fulfillment and not trying to appeal.
And to be fair, the criticism wasn't unfounded. For a stretch of time, much of B. Simone's content seemed centered around two recurring themes: chasing love and leaning heavily into faith. The latter became especially noticeable. She went all in on her Christian identity, posting videos filled with scripture, showing herself in tears with a Bible in hand, even preaching as though she were stepping into a new calling. But instead of feeling inspiring, it often came across as overbearing. Almost like watching a late-night public access program, where the sincerity gets lost in the theatrics. Audiences began to sense the disconnect, and little by little, people started calling it out.
Trouble finding love, so she's trying to make the Lord her husband. And I have a couple of notes here because I really wanted to flesh this out of what I was thinking. And I just feel like in spaces that are predominantly Christian, women, like, becoming a wife is central to that. Like, it's a huge part of what you do. And so the feeling of not being a wife, excuse my two missing nails, the feeling of not being a wife feels like something is missing, like something is constantly missing because you're not fulfilling your duty. And
what makes this phase particularly interesting is the underlying motive people suspected. Some argued that B. Simone's deep dive into faith wasn't just about spiritual growth. It was a strategic hope that drawing closer to God might also draw her closer to the husband she longed for. In other words, if she proved her devotion, maybe God would reward her with the man she wanted. But when that blessing didn't materialize, her narrative shifted again. Eventually, she pivoted from the pursuit altogether, declaring she no longer needed a man to define her happiness.
of that, she feels unconditional love from God, right? God's love is unconditional, and she wants someone who cannot leave, because we've seen B. Simone get, and in theory, pretty close to finding love before, and it doesn't work out for her. On top of that, like, a good relationship with God is not the problem here. I think that the same way we can acknowledge that a mother's love is not the problem, but some of these boy moms have relationships that are inappropriate, I just feel like the way that B. Simone sometimes carries her relationship is...
After her attempts at love seemed to fall flat, B. Simone redirected her energy toward a different kind of devotion this time, fully embracing her relationship with God. It was a noticeable shift. From chasing romance to professing that she had found fulfillment in faith. In a way, it felt like the ultimate safe choice. Unlike men, God wouldn't ignore her texts, ghost her, or walk away. He was a constant presence. And leaning into that became her new narrative. But even this transformation came with complications. On her podcast, she frequently brought friends into the fold, weaving faith into nearly every conversation. Yet behind the scenes, many of those friendships crumbled. Critics saw it as more proof that her spiritual pivot wasn't enough to fix deeper issues. Faith couldn't mask the friction in her personal life. Eventually, Simone seemed to abandon the pursuit of men altogether, anchoring herself in God instead. But that phase didn't last long either. Soon, she resurfaced in a new light, bringing a feminist angle into her public voice and reshaping her message yet again.
I'm open. I'm not actively looking. I'm not like, I need a husband, I need a man,
I need a relationship. You need a husband? Ooh. You don't think you need someone to be a covering? Yourself. I'm actually thankful he's kept you hidden.
Wow. Oh, Lord, don't make me cry.
It's okay. Things that are hidden are protected and valued. You're not in a safe if you're not worth anything. That's the enemy lying to you.
Whoever this Negro is, man, I'm telling you, boy, you relationship podcast dude. He gonna say it's okay to be hidden because things that are hidden means they're valuable.
At this stage, B. Simone began proclaiming that she no longer needed a man at all. She leaned heavily into the narrative of independence, almost as if to convince herself as much as her audience. In one interview, a podcast host tried to reassure her, telling her that being hidden was a blessing, that it meant she was valuable and protected until the right person came along. Simone teared up at the sentiment, but critics weren't buying it. To them, she wasn't hidden, she was simply overlooked. That skepticism only grew when she later appeared on dating apps. Screenshots of her Hinge profile began circulating, showing her presenting herself as faith-driven and spiritually confident, while still hoping for connection. On paper, she looked polished, well-dressed, professional, and successful. But to critics, the irony was glaring. Here was a woman who once dismissed 9-to-5 men, now publicly seeking companionship like everyone else. The backlash hit hard. Many pointed out the inconsistency. How could someone who boasted about earning millions a month now be searching for love on a dating app? And more importantly, if her standards had once excluded working-class men, why did it seem that entrepreneurial men weren't pursuing her either? To some, it confirmed the suspicion that her attitudes, and perhaps her personality, were getting in her way. What makes this story sting is that B. Simone isn't unattractive. She has charisma, looks, and a platform most people would envy. But critics argue her public persona shifting constantly between comedian, Christian influencer, entrepreneur, and now a woman of faith looking for love makes her come across as inconsistent and difficult to take seriously. Relationships, friendships, even business partnerships have reportedly crumbled around her, feeding the narrative that she's hard to deal with. By her mid-30s, the perception became clear. Despite her success and confidence, many saw her as out of touch with her own reality. And in a twist of irony, the same 9-to-5 men she once dismissed may now be the very type of partner she'll have to consider.